Thank you all for coming together here. Ms. Gressler, something you said that really stuck out to me. You were talking about the labor workforce, and I believe you said something to the effect that there are stats here that participation rates in the labor workforce of individuals aged 55 to 64 increased by 12.8%. Participation rates for those ages 65 and older increased by 8.3%. Is that increasing? Are we going to be seeing that trend growing even further as more time passes?
I think we will continue to see that increasing trend there, and a lot of that has to do with both the increased health, as we've seen improvements in healthcare, and also the reduced physical demands of a lot of the jobs that we have, and also the aging of the population. Some of it is also policy related, but there have been some studies that have shown that there is additional work capacity beyond what we've already seen. We have seen these positive improvements.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Lamond, you had something in your opening statement that said 54% of households have no savings. I think that was of all households, but more specifically when it comes to seniors, I saw something that AARP put out from a survey last year saying that 20% of adults age 50 plus have no retirement savings, and more than half, I think it was 61%, said that they were worried that they don't have enough to be able to support them. I guess I just want to ask you if there's anything further you want to unpack on that, and also, is that getting worse as well over time?
There are additional challenges. People are trying to save in many situations, and we find that because of caregiving needs, in particular, older workers are taking a little bit more time out of the workforce. So we're concerned about that. One reason we're so focused on Social Security, obviously, is so people have that earned benefit when they retire.
Yeah, I really wanted to just put those two stats together because I think it really tells a story of what this committee and what we here in Congress need to focus in on. That we have a rising workforce in terms of an aging workforce,
yes,
but we also have a larger growing level of the workforce that feels significant financial insecurity. And my mom and my dad, they retired, but they are dependent upon Social Security for almost all of their income right now, and it causes so much challenge in terms of the decisions that are being made. And so that's something that I just really hope we hone in on here in this committee and in Congress to address. And Ms. Lamond, you raised it just in your last answer here about the effects that caregiving can play, when it comes to, these issues. I think we're seeing this a lot when it comes to combating age discrimination, challenges when it comes to the growing number of workers who are also caregivers need to be able to take some of their time. Also recognizing the need for businesses to be able to offer benefits and flexibilities that can help with caregiving. I guess I wanted to just ask you if you can talk a little bit more about the intersection between caregiving and age discrimination.
Sure. Well, we know there are, based on a report we released last week, 63 million family caregivers, and 60% of those are in the workforce. So we know this is an issue not just for the caregiver, but for the employer. And we hear anecdotally from workers who are caregivers that they're a little worried about taking time out of work to say they're doing caregiving. They think that might jeopardize their status in the company. We don't have any direct statistics on that. But on the other hand, I mentioned our employer pledge program. This is a voluntary program where employers say they are committed to leveling the playing field and work with us on things they can do. Mm-hmm. And one of the areas we hear about the most from employers right now is, how do I manage the increased number of workers I have? And not just older workers, workers of all ages who are caregivers, part-time family caregivers. How do I create a flexible workforce where they can be productive at work and also continue to be the backbone of the long-term care system in this country? I think this is a growing issue and one we'll continue to look at as we encourage more companies to hire older workers, and we encourage more older workers to stay in their jobs.
Great.
Both for their financial support and for their good health and for their family.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask one more question, if that's okay. Ms. Carlson, we just heard Mr. Horton talking about sort of the economic implications of this, in terms of businesses, and how, at least from what we've seen so far, we haven't seen a deluge of problems that are facing businesses when it comes to some of the legislation that we passed regarding forced arbitration. You got to a little bit to this in your opening remarks, but I just wanted to offer you another opportunity to delve in a little deeper. Some of my colleagues have raised concerns about whether or not some of these actions that were taken on forced arbitration to stopping it would have negative impacts on businesses. I, for one, am very compelled by some of the responses you've given. I was proud to be able to support the efforts to work alongside you to end forced arbitration for sexual harassment and sexual assault. But I wanted to see if there's some further lessons that you learned from that to help us as we're having these discussions here on the Hill.
Thank you so much, Senator. I think everything we've discussed today with regard to the problems of Americans aging longer and needing to be in the workforce financially, the underlying message in all of that is we can improve all of those things, everything that's been discussed, but if you keep the barrier of forced arbitration, you're still going to have the biggest problem, right? We talked a lot about removing the barriers today. The biggest barrier is the idea that arbitration is being forced on these workers. All we're asking for is the choice to make it voluntary. And if forced arbitration is so wonderful, why do we use the word forced, right? We're not saying it's voluntary. The other thing I would just add is that it ain't fun to come forward. And so that's another reason why we haven't seen this deluge of cases. And to add to that, what Professor said is that it's very hard to prove these cases at the state level or the federal level. And so just offering Americans choice is what we're asking for. They may still choose arbitration, but they will know that they have the ability to use their Seventh Amendment right.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Ranking Member, for pushing forward this legislation, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak here.